Picture this. You're in a meeting. Someone leans back, smiles, and says something that is completely, factually, embarrassingly wrong. But they say it like it's a fact carved into a mountain. No hedging, no I think, just certainty. And your brain, without asking your permission, quietly nods along. Later, in the car, you replay it and think, wait, that wasn't even true. Here's the thing. You're not stupid. You're not gullible. You're running a very old piece of software that treats confidence as evidence. And today, we're pulling that software apart. Let's get into it. Your brain has a shortcut, a cheat code, and this cheat code was incredibly useful about 100,000 years ago. Back then, if someone said, "Don't drink from that river," you didn't have time to fact check. You didn't have Google. You didn't have peer-reviewed studies. You had about 4 seconds and a stomach that really preferred to keep functioning. So your ancestors evolved a very simple rule. If someone speaks with confidence, believe them first, question them later. The people who paused to double-check every confident warning, they often didn't get to pass on their genes. The ones who trusted fast survived. And you are the descendant of the fast trusters. That's why, even in a boardroom in 2026, when someone speaks with total certainty about quarterly projections, your ancient brain whispers, "Sounds legit." This isn't a personality flaw, it's factory settings. Psychologists have a name for this. It's called the confidence heuristic. A heuristic is just a mental shortcut, a way your brain saves energy by guessing instead of calculating. And when it comes to judging who's right, your brain uses confidence as its number one clue. Not evidence, not logic, confidence. Which is a little terrifying when you really sit with it. There's a fascinating study on this by Cameron Anderson and colleagues at UC Berkeley. They found that overconfident people are consistently rated as more competent by their peers, even when their actual performance is average. Read that again. Average performance. Above average trust. The confident ones weren't better at the task. They were just better at seeming better. And that was enough. Think about that job interview where the loudest, most self-assured candidate somehow got the offer, even though the quiet one had a better portfolio. Think about that friend who recommends restaurants with the passion of a food critic, and you go every time, even though half of them are just okay. Think about the podcaster who says wild things with a straight face, and millions of people write it in their notebooks. Confidence is a costume, and your brain keeps letting it into the party. Here's where it gets weirder. Confidence doesn't just make people believe you, it makes people like you. It makes people follow you. Researchers have found that in groups of strangers, the person who speaks first and speaks most confidently is usually seen as the leader, regardless of whether they actually know what they're talking about. The group basically hands them a crown for showing up loud. This is why the loudest voice in a group chat often steers the plan. Not the smartest, not the most experienced, the loudest. And once that person is anointed the expert in your head, something sneaky happens. You start filtering everything they say through a trust filter. Their next opinion gets a discount. You question it less. You defend it more. Your brain has just outsourced its thinking to someone else's vibe. Now let's talk about something called the Dunning-Kruger effect. You've probably heard the name. Most people misuse it, so let's get it right. David Dunning and Justin Kruger back in 1999 found something wild. People who are the worst at a skill are often the most confident about that skill. And people who are actually good at it tend to underestimate themselves. Why? Because being bad at something also means you're bad at noticing you're bad at it. You literally don't have the tools to see your own mistakes. So the least qualified person in the room is often the one talking the loudest, and the most qualified person is over in the corner quietly saying, "Well, it depends." Guess who your brain trusts? Yeah, exactly. This is the horror movie plot twist of your social life. The person who sounds the most sure is often the person who should be the least sure. Let's go deeper, because it gets more uncomfortable. There's a concept called social proof, made famous by psychologist Robert Cialdini. When we're uncertain, we look at what other people are doing and copy them. Now combine social proof with the confidence heuristic. One confident person speaks. A few people nod. Suddenly, the whole room is nodding. And you, watching all those nods, think, well, if everyone's on board, it must be true. Nobody actually checked. They all just trusted the first confident nod. This is how bad ideas turn into movements. This is how a rumor becomes a fact by dinner. This is how an entire team pursues a strategy nobody actually believed in. Confidence started it. Social proof finished it. You've been in that room. We all have. Marketers know this in their bones. Watch any ad. The pitch is never, we think this might work for some people, results may vary. It's, this will change your life. Why? Because certainty sells. Doubt does not. The supplement guy on your feed doesn't say, preliminary studies suggest. He says, this is the one thing your doctor won't tell you. And your brain, tired and scrolling, quietly buys it. The finance influencer with the rented Lamborghini doesn't say, investing is complicated. He says, do exactly what I do, and people wire him money. Confidence is the packaging. The product barely matters. Here's a study that should genuinely bother you. Researchers at Carnegie Mellon and elsewhere have shown that confident-sounding financial advisors get more clients, even when their track records are worse than their humble, accurate peers. You could literally lose money by trusting the confident person over the correct one. And people do, every single day. Now let's zoom in on politics for a second. Then we'll zoom right back out, because this isn't that kind of channel. Studies on political speech consistently find that leaders who speak in absolutes, who never hedge, who never say I don't know, are rated as stronger and more trustworthy than leaders who acknowledge complexity, even when the complex answer is the honest one. We are, as a species, deeply allergic to it's complicated, and extremely attracted to I have the answer, which, again, is not a moral failing. It's a shortcut your ancient brain uses to survive. But in the modern world, that shortcut can steer you into some bad decisions. Okay, let's talk about you. Think about the last time you changed your mind because someone spoke with total conviction, not with better evidence, just with more certainty. Maybe it was a doctor who dismissed your concern in 3 seconds. Maybe it was a friend who said your partner was wrong, so confidently that you started to believe it. Maybe it was a boss who made a decision that made no sense, but they made it with such force that nobody questioned it. That wasn't reasoning. That was your confidence heuristic doing its ancient job. Here's the part that should bother you a little. Confidence and correctness are not the same thing. They're not even in the same neighborhood. Sometimes they show up together. Often they don't. And your brain, unless you consciously interrupt it, will treat them as identical twins. Now here's where it flips, because knowing this changes everything. Watch what happens next time you're in a conversation. Notice who's speaking with certainty. Ask yourself, quietly, would they be this sure if they actually knew all the facts? Because real experts, the ones who spend decades in a field, tend to hedge. They say things like, usually, it depends, the evidence suggests. They know how big the unknown is. The louder someone claims to know everything, the more that should raise a small, polite eyebrow inside your head. There's a beautiful line from the philosopher Bertrand Russell. He said, the whole problem with the world is that fools and fanatics are always so certain of themselves, and wiser people so full of doubts. He wrote that in 1933, and it might be more true now than it was then. Now let's talk about the mirror, because this cuts both ways. You've also used confidence as a shortcut on yourself. Have you ever been in a meeting, mostly sure of an idea, and watered it down when you said it out loud? I don't know, maybe this might be dumb, but... And then someone else said your exact idea, but with confidence, and the room applauded them? That's the confidence heuristic, weaponized against you. You had the answer, you just packaged it in doubt, and doubt reads as wrong, even when it's correct. That doesn't mean you should fake certainty about things you don't know. That's how we got into this mess in the first place. But it does mean that how you say something is doing half the work of what you say, and most people never realize it. Here's a small experiment. For 1 week, try removing the phrases I think, I feel like, this might be dumb, but, and sorry from the start of your sentences when you actually do know what you're talking about. Not to be arrogant, just to let the truth arrive without a bodyguard of apologies. Watch how differently people respond. Same person, same idea, different packaging, different world. Now flip it again. When you're on the receiving end, add one tiny question to your mental toolkit, just one. How do they know that? That's it. That's the whole trick. Not are they wrong, not are they lying, just how do they know? Because the confident person often can't answer that, and once they can't, the spell breaks. You can see them clearly again. Human, guessing, just like the rest of us. Here's an example from everyday life. You're buying a car. The salesman says, with total conviction, "This is the best deal on the lot." Your brain wants to nod. Instead, you ask, "How do you know?" Watch him blink. Watch the certainty wobble. That wobble is the truth peeking through. Or you're reading a headline that screams a definite fact. Ask, how does the writer actually know this? Half the time, they don't. They're just confident, and their confidence traveled to you. Or your uncle at Thanksgiving, doing his annual monologue about the economy. Instead of arguing, just ask, gently, how do you know? That question is a tiny crowbar. It pries open the black box of certainty and shows you what's actually inside, which is often, honestly, not much. Let's step back, because there's something almost tender in all of this. The reason we crave confident people is that the world is scary, and complexity is exhausting, and we're all secretly hoping somebody, somewhere, has it figured out. Confident people offer us relief. They offer certainty in a universe that mostly doesn't have any. And we love them for it, even when they're wrong, because being wrong together feels safer than being uncertain alone. That's not weakness, that's being human. But awareness is a superpower. Once you can see the confidence heuristic working, you're not stuck inside it anymore. You get to choose. You get to trust confident people when they're also right, and gently sidestep them when they're just loud. Here's a strange upside of this whole thing. The most trustworthy people in your life might be the ones who say, "I'm not sure," the most. The friends who admit when they don't know. The mentor who says, "That's a great question. Let me actually think about it." They're not weak. They're calibrated. Their confidence matches reality. And when they finally do say, "I'm sure about this," you can actually bank on it. Those are the people worth listening to, not the ones who never doubt, the ones who doubt in the right places. So here's your slightly uncomfortable takeaway. Your brain is wired to trust confidence more than truth. It's a survival shortcut from a world that no longer exists. And in a world of loud podcasts, viral posts, charismatic salesmen, and TED Talk perfect delivery, that shortcut can quietly run your life. But you can interrupt it with one question, 4 little words. How do you know? Ask it of others. Ask it of yourself. Ask it of the headline, the influencer, the boss, the uncle, the inner voice that says you're not good enough. Half the confident voices in your world will not have an answer. And that silence, that little hesitation, is where your real thinking begins. Confidence is loud. Truth is often quiet. And now you know the difference. If your brain does this too, and you kind of loved catching yourself in the act, you're going to like what's coming next. Drop a comment telling me the last time someone's confidence talked you into something you regret. I read them. And hit subscribe so the next one finds you. See you in the next one.